Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen to the everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell. The doctor saving lives at your local hospital, the war veteran down the street who risked his lives for our freedom, the police officers and firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling, but there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer, the ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what? I can fix that. I can help people, and I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world, others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks of the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. Okay, hello and welcome back to The Hero Show. I am on the line with Ravi Toor. Are you there, Ravi?
I am here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Glad to have you. I'm going to do a quick intro here. Ravi is a coach who combines a hybrid of life and business coaching to help empower ordinary people do extraordinary things. And what I wanted to start off with is tell me a little bit about that. What is it that you do today? Tell me about your business and how you help people accomplish and overcome their problems.
So I focus actually specifically on ordinary people. So not anybody who might consider themselves kind of higher up in the status quo, just regular day folks who are impacted in their daily lives by different social issues, whatever that might look like. It might look like money, it might look like jobs, it might look like politics, the 9 yards. So what I do is I focus in on their personal development, get them aligned with what their actual passions are, and then work out a plan so that they step into a role of leadership, creating social change.
Nice. So you're working with, and it's not like specifically entrepreneurs or specifically, CEOs or anything like that. It's just normal, everyday people who are trying to do better things in their life. That's what you're known for now? Absolutely.
Trying to better themselves and by default, a byproduct, trying to better the world.
Awesome. So you have what I call a ripple effect, where when you work with your clients, you have influence that goes beyond the work that you do. That's really cool. I love those types of businesses that have a positive ripple effect in the world.
Thank you very much.
So as you know, this show is all about the hero's journey, right? And the people we bring on have, generally we want to pull back the hero's mask a little bit and look at your story. So every hero has an origin story, and I want to talk about yours. Where did you start, when you started to realize that maybe you were different, maybe you had superpowers you could use to help people? Where did you start to either develop or discover your value? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I would honestly have to say it started super, super young. I was pegged as the Lisa Simpson of my community and in my family, right? I was a girl raised in the country to entrepreneurs, actually, and they were chicken farmers. And I would run up and down the pavement of our property with signs and global warming, animal abuse, or anything until they schooled me on what was going on back there, right? And explained what was happening. But very much so, when I was a kid, I stood up for a lot of things, and I can remember, standing up for global issues, in the house or in my local community, to my school and the debate teams and so forth. So I knew there was something different about me, and kind of fostered that a little bit. I would have to say that throughout my journey, I've had the opportunity to be exposed to different things that gave me an opportunity to foster the growth. And then as I transitioned into early adulthood, I realized, I could be a lawyer, I could be a doctor, what my community would like me to be, or I can go and help the marginalized. And for me, that was youth at the time, right? And so I became a youth worker for some time.
Oh, cool.
That's where really things started to shift into where I would say real life met finances and met obligations and everything. And so I had to make some shifts, right? And so I started chasing the money and took a corporate job in finance, which was completely against all of my values and ethics. And after working there, the thing that really derailed what I knew of life at that time and kind of put everything back together cohesively was the US election, right? And that scared the eases out of me pretty much. Like as soon as I realized, wow, that's where we're at, I better wake up and do something about it. I can't just pretend like I have no part to play in this. That's when I realized I needed to do something bigger than just, you know, type in day trades and make a paycheck, right?
So, and that sort of transitioned you into the coaching that you do now?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it did start off with me funneling myself into online work, which started off as being a VA and then quickly utilizing my skills from the corporate background and from my youth background of building out workflows. And so then I started to offer online entrepreneurs workflows and building processes within their organizations. And then I realized, well, I've got the psychology background. I've already coached before. So why don't I just get real with what I truly want to do? And being the nurturer at heart,
Yeah.
why don't I just do what I'm really good at inherently? And when I applied myself to that and what I called at the time a corporate crutch, I released the corporate crutch of the workflows and all that systematic stuff that maybe would have served better. That's when I really saw the boom in what I was meant to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I help a lot of my clients do that kind of stuff, and I want to make the point real quick that just because you're good at something, if it doesn't make you feel like you're coming alive when you go out and do it for people, then it's probably not the right path for you. And like when I sit down with my clients and I help them build processes for their business, I would like rather be doing nothing in the world except maybe playing with my kids, because that kind of stuff makes me come alive. And it sounds like you realize pretty quick, like I'm good at this and people need it, but it doesn't make me come alive.
Absolutely.
So you changed gears. And how quickly did you make that transition where you realized this is not doing it for me? Let's change into something that does.
Yeah, it took me about a year to figure that out. And it was closer to the end of 2017 when I realized, wow, this is just making me as miserable as working in corporate. And yeah, I'm making great money at it, but at the end of the day, I want to be doing something to better the world. And this is bettering for sure entrepreneurs and their organizations, which does have that ripple effect depending on who the entrepreneur is and what they're trying to do. But it wasn't the fast result I was looking for. And it wasn't something that I was very passionate about, right? And so following your passions is...
Yeah. So if you could make a recommendation to someone who's in that position where they're doing something that's making them good money, but it's not lighting the fire, how did you sort of transition out of that, and how would you recommend someone who's in that same position sort of make that kind of transition?
Well, a big part of it, and I use this often, is objectivity, right? So it is quite subjective, the whole concept of, oh, you know, I'm not really loving this. Obviously, there's a subjective component to that, but you got to get honest with yourself and really ask yourself the real questions. Why? What else would you rather do? And so I had to make a list of the things I was really good at, because a lot of the times we forget what it is that we are inherently good at, what we've developed as skills along the way. Remember that the coaching aspect was something I learned in school. Of course, I'm a nurturer at heart, but there are skills I had to pick up along the way. And so as soon as I started to write down the lists of, okay, what are my skills? What are the things I really love? What are the things, what are my values, right? What do I want to stand up for? What do I want to accomplish at the end of the day? Once I made that really clear in front of me and I could see it objectively, that's when I realized, okay, this goes together and this, oh wait, I just should be coaching people. I should be coaching. And to be honest with you, once I made that transition, there was a lot of learning after that, right? The messaging changes, your focus changes. And so it's kind of like starting over again, but with that
Which can be scary.
Yeah, for sure. It can be totally scary. And it was, because the money I was making in processes was far greater than what I was making as a brand new coach. And as you know, there's a lot of coaches out there. So the competition was fierce too, right? And so being able to navigate through that, take that pay kind of dip in order to make something way more valuable and know that I'm pursuing something I'm passionate about for happiness and fulfillment, not specifically for money, was what gave me the fuel to be able to make that transition be realized, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people they struggle with that because like how do I make this transition? Either maybe they're in a corporate job and they want to get into entrepreneurship, or they're doing something in one place in their business and they want to do something else, and just that struggle of like there's going to be that crossover, right? As you dip into one and build up the next one, and that's scary. And applaud you for having the guts to do that and move forward. And I think that's part of one of the things that makes entrepreneurs different is a willingness to take risks like that,
Yeah.
to better yourself and better the world, which is really cool.
Yes.
So, and to just further that discussion, you said you made a list about the things that you're good at, which I think ties really, really nicely into the next question, which is your superpowers, right? Every hero has their superpowers. It's what you do or your build or offer to this world that really helps solve problems for people. It's the things that you use to help your clients slay their villains.
Yeah.
Right? So what are your superpowers? What did you actually come down to and say, what, this is really what Ravi is great at, what my superpowers are?
Yeah. So one of the things that was consistent was I'm a really honest person, right? Like I'm very authentic, but I'm also very honest. Truth is a core component of who I am. And so for a lot, that can be confusing. How do you apply truth as a skill? And trust me, I mean, you turn on the news anytime today, you'll realize truth is a skill for sure, right? And so that was one of them. And having a voice, being unapologetic was another skill, right? But also the listening aspect and being able to see deeply into people, like being able to really understand the core of someone without very much information other than talking to them. Aside from all the bullshit stories we tell ourselves, I'm really good at that, right? And so when I thought about that, I was like, well, obviously that is something that a nurturer would possess, but what else am I really good at? Well, I'm really good at tech. So that means that I'm really, really capable of taking this coaching business of mine and accessing or giving access to people that are all over the world, right? Versus just being local, brick and mortar. And that sets me really apart from the coaches that are in my community, because a lot of coaches, and I would say a lot of people, oddly enough, in a technical world that we live in today, suffer or stumble when it comes to technology. How do I hook this up? How do I make this work? And my ability to really just be able to learn quickly and learn technology quickly gave me that leg up to reach people all over the world.
So to recap, it reminds me of something that I hear Steve Jobs say at Apple keynotes all the time. It's like Apple exists at the intersection between, what does he say, between arts and technology. And it sounds like you have something similar where it's like you sort of exist at that intersection between like truth and the ability to like see past people's bullshit and technology. So you can really help them take advantage of everything that's going on in our world with technology and like move into the 22nd century, 21st century, like all this newfangled stuff that's happening all over.
Absolutely. And to really embrace it, right? Because I got to be honest, I was that one who feared technology myself, right? I had a big problem with technology. When they came out with deposit your payroll checks with your phone,
Yeah.
oh no, that's hackable, that's terrible, what about? And then obviously 3 weeks later after the launch, here I am, oh my goodness, I don't have to go to a bank, right? So embracing technology was really important for me, and it is important even more so because I am able to help those that I help embrace it as well, because that's how the ordinary person gets their message out.
And what's cool too is that the technology has really started to level the playing field for people.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of cool benefits to that, where like someone who 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago wouldn't have been able to have a voice or engage the way that we do. Like my kids, for instance, I mentioned to you earlier before we got on the show, I travel full time. And my kids are, I've got 3 of them that are 5 years old and younger who get on Facebook Messenger for Kids with their grandparents and with their friends and family from all over the world and people that they've met, and they manage their own virtual communications, right? And they keep up with people that they've met and talked to and do video chat and all those kind of things. Like there's so much that technology lets people do that, if they sort of learn to embrace the magic,
Absolutely.
they can have more fulfillment in their life. And it's like I talk all the time about this, that a rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
And just the technology we have available today versus like when I was a kid, like our kids' baseline for like lifestyle is just so far and away better than ours was. And
Oh,
ours
yeah.
wasn't that bad.
I
Like
know.
it's like but it's crazy. Like my kids carry a computer in their pocket that would have smashed anything I had access to when I was their age.
Right? Right? It
Um,
is really, it is so empowering for people to understand that the technology, I mean, that phone we carry in our hands every single day is your portal to the world. And I mean, I know that like Mark Zuckerberg kind of figured it out when he started Facebook, but I don't think the world really understood what it meant to be connected, right? And so
mhm.
when I work with, for example, a client of mine who is running for president 2020, it is an ordinary individual who literally, if not given the advantages of technology, would probably not be running, right? Would not have
Yeah.
the opportunity to run against the big ones, right? The big ballers. And now with technology, this individual is able to reach
And
so
they can have a voice,
such
which
a
is
voice.
cool.
Powerful. It changes the playing field. Absolutely.
Yeah, that is so cool. I mean, we could probably talk about that like all day
All
long,
day.
because that's such a cool field, and there's so many things that are happening with technology, and it's like just the fact that you and I can hop on a video call like this
I
and
know.
build a podcast. Right, you're in Vancouver, I'm traveling, I'm in Texas right now, and we've got fancy lights and cool studios and all over the place, and we can have conversations
Yeah,
and contribute to the social fabric, right? The social
absolutely.
fabric that makes up our world, which is so cool because if we tried to have this conversation 10 years ago, it wouldn't have happened.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So, so let me flip the tables on you real quick. We talked a little bit about your superpowers. The other side of that is every hero has their fatal flaws, right?
Ooh.
And I talk about I have a few fatal flaws. One of them that I talk about regularly on the show is I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist.
Oh, yeah.
Like I will spend an obscene amount of time trying to get like one pixel into the place I want it to be.
Oh, God,
Um,
I've been
like,
there.
like, like terrible, and I will allow that to get in the way of actually getting things done, so I regularly let perfect get in the way of done. And I regularly I have to work on that and struggle through that, and hiring other people to get things done for me has helped a lot in my business.
Yeah.
So my curiosity is, what is your fatal flaw, but more importantly, what have you been doing in your business to help overcome that, so other people who struggle with similar flaws can do the same thing in theirs?
So there's actually, I have a couple, to be honest with you. And so the first one might not surprise you, but I am an over analyzer. I think. I think of grand ideas. I'm just like the little philosopher at heart, right? So I'm always
Yeah.
thinking. And I gotta tell you, I can lose a lot of time just pondering an idea, researching an idea. Research is probably the worst. Oh my goodness, can we talk about rabbit holes? I will just go to the library and start reading, and I will just get on Google and I'll start Googling, and hours will go by and I've done nothing concrete other than research. And some will say, yeah, well, research is imperative, right? For sure. But you got to know when to draw the line and say, okay, now
Yeah,
it's
and like actually go do something.
right. So that's one of them. The other one is it is, and if I was to be honest, it would be some doubt, right? Some self-doubt or fear in what people might think I'm saying, right? Because I don't apologize for the way I
Yeah.
represent myself or my truths. And I am about shaking and waking people up, right? And so if it's kind of like an abrupt wake, then I'm not sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I want you to be woken. And so sometimes there's a fear there of what people might think or what people might say, or trolls, right? So let's talk about the over analytical side of us, and that kind of the person who really consumes their times with thinking and versus doing. A good thing that's worked for me is creating kind of a time, like a zone for myself to play, right? I love
Hmm.
to think. It is part of what's created this business for me. It's part of what's created the deep values I have and my understanding of the world. So of course it's important to me, but there's got to be a time and place for it. So what I do is I actually create time blocks for just that. And I have a journal for just thinking. And so this goes very similar to, I've come up with some archetypes. And so you've heard one, the nurturer, right? But the innovator is another. And so the innovator is somebody who clunks around in their shop or in the garden, right? And they're creators. And so this would be similar to an innovator. Have a journal that is specific to your workshop or your time block for thinking. And that's where all your ideas go. That's where all your thoughts go, right? It might just be a quick like blurb, or it might be a whole like 40-page essay kind of a deal, maybe, whatever that looks like to you. And give yourself a realistic amount of time, right? So I give myself anywhere between 3 to 6 hours of just playtime. Go play, go have fun, get that out of your system. But everything else is time blocked for everything productive, right? So what I'll do is I'll have also an additional time period of a review where I review that journal to see if there's anything that pops out that I really want to kind of pursue and put action towards. And that usually happens on Fridays, right? That little review session. And then I take a look at that and say, okay, what action plan am I going to make that's going to help me kind of achieve that goal or realize this idea?
So those ideas.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I want to spend a little bit of time there because I know a lot of people, myself included, that struggle with like, how do I fit innovation into my business, right? How do I fit that? And you realize that like, we were talking about this with one of my business partners the other day, how valuable innovation is.
Oh yeah.
But most people don't know how to charge for it, or how to think about it in their business, or how to time block for it.
Yeah.
And realizing that they spend so much time, like I have this product or this service that I need to sell. And, that's a product or service has it's got defined parameters and defined cost of goods sold. And it's got defined, all the pieces of a product or service are defined. And so it's easy to present to the marketplace and put out there. But you realize that products and services get developed because of innovation,
right?
Because of that playtime that you're talking about. So you have to have both.
Right.
And you have to have the work path between them, that's the getting things done, right? To go from one to the other. So I love how you've given yourself permission, and not only permission, but you've blocked into your calendar, this is my innovation time.
Right. And it's again, having that objective ear towards what's going on intuitively for you inside, right? We can go all day, and we have for a really long time, we can go against the grain of who we are. And it's always an uphill battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we can actually give ourselves not only the permission, but just accept that there's a piece of us that wants to have this time, that wants to create. And like you said, you couldn't have worded it any better. The creation only comes with innovation. And I think a lot of us wear that innovator cap, right? We interchange it with other caps that we have. And so giving that time and that space, that block to be able to do that, and whether it's an hour, but I would, if you really are a thinker at heart, then I would give yourself an actual block of time, because realistically, an hour is garbage. It's nothing, right? And so giving yourself that permission, having acceptance.
Yeah, the time to go into the rabbit holes.
Totally. It's worth it. Yeah. It's worth it. And the cool thing
some of them will be dead ends, and that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
And you can move on, and you know that hey, I've got my set time for this. And when I'm done, I'm going to move on and actually go take things that push my business forward, and realize that if you have it as a part of your business and it's not taking over, then it's going to help push your business forward in and of itself. Now, if all you ever did was that, and you never did any of the getting things done part, then you would have problems, which is, you're talking about, you have that flaw, right?
I had that problem. I'll tell you, it was a tough one. I was like, what's happening here? We need to change things up, right? But no.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other one that you mentioned, the other flaw, how do you deal with that?
So that one, it definitely took me by surprise, because I find myself to be a very confident woman, right? A very secure woman. But at the same time, we talk about the internet and how it expands into the world, right? And you can be met with some not so nice people, I guess is the best way to put it, right? And so some people who are not going to agree with you, and and that's fine. And so one of the things I had to do really quickly was develop rituals that were sacred to me, right? So my mornings are really sacred. And I think you as a coach will really understand this. Building rituals is imperative to your success. And so for me, first there's that meditation, right? So it's very short. It's not super long. It's 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. It just depends on my day, right? But I build in that core component of meditation so that I'm able to listen to me at all times, right? Because when there's trolls coming up and they're kind of shooting their keyboard warrior thoughts out at you, some of them, some of them are worth listening to, but a lot of them aren't. They're just a bunch of people who have criticisms and really are doing not much else with their life other than trying to bring you down, right? And so being able to listen and discern which ones are important to look at and recognize and maybe take some pieces from, and which are important to just release, all comes from you being able to trust your gut, trying to listen to yourself, right? And so building out that morning ritual or routine of meditation is important, because then at least what I can do is get clear on what my voice really sounds like and being able to listen to it. After that, it's about building my self-confidence daily, right? So after the meditation, it is just a roundup in front of the mirror while I get ready of all the good things I can possibly say. And I'm telling you, like, sure, some people can start off with some very simplistic affirmations or mantras, whatever people want to call them. I call them affirmations. But at the end of the day, when you start to really build your self-confidence and you use this tactic over and over on a daily basis, you start hearing some crazy things about yourself from yourself, some really deep and like powerful things. And so that kind of keeps me very secure. And then what I end up doing is I do a release at night, right? So I don't go to sleep with anybody's garbage, right? I don't go to sleep with anybody's stuff. I don't go to sleep with rumination. I don't go to sleep with negativity. I do gratitude. Gratitude is a huge, huge, huge piece for me, and something I get everybody to work on when I work with them. And then working on more rewiring at night, just with the things I say to myself before I go to sleep.
So the stuff that's ruminating all night is good stuff.
It's all good stuff, right? So that when we're in that kind of the middle ground of when you aren't exactly in REM, you're in non-REM stages, you're able to really categorize that information to replace the stuff that doesn't exist, the stuff that doesn't need to exist, sorry. And so those are the core components of what I do. And then the other part of it is I work with an actual coach to be able to work through, navigate some of these darker paths, right?
I was going to say, one of the things that helps me with that is just having someone in my life that I can soundboard off of, like, here's where I'm at, what I'm struggling with, and just have someone in your corner.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
The boxing match. So especially if you're out there doing something, like if you're doing stuff, if someone's not being mean to you, you're not doing right.
Right. Right.
So like someone's gonna, they're gonna come out of the corner and hit you in the boxing square, right? So you gotta, someone in your corner say, hey, you're doing good. You're doing good. Like this is part of the game. Part of the game is you put yourself out there, people are gonna take a swing at you. And
Absolutely.
yeah. So, I mean, you're doing something right if you have that. And you mentioned something else that I want, you sort of glossed over a little bit, but I want to pull it out because I think it's really important. And you said that the people that say mean things, or not necessarily mean things, but things that are counter to what you believe, you categorize them into worth listening to or not worth listening to.
Absolutely.
And that's super, super powerful, I think, because like, just between listening to you and myself, we probably have disagreements on the political spectrum.
Oh,
but if we sat down and talked about them, like I might be the kind of person that would be worth listening to, or you might be the kind of person that's worth listening to, where someone who's just, they're not actually doing anything in their lives, they have no credentials to back up their opinions, may not, the things they're saying may not be worth actually taking the time to consider or worry about or ruminate on.
Right. And so you got to be able to really, first of all, the very core concept is we're all human beings. We
Mm-hmm.
all have values. We all have experiences. We all have pasts that nobody really understands other than ourselves. So what we say is a representation of who we are, right? What our experiences have been. What has what has the climate around us been like, right? And so for you, your life is probably really different, right? You travel, you have a family. I'm stationed. I'm in Canada. I have a dog. Like I have a husband and a dog. That's my family, right? So we're very different. So you have an ability to open my eyes, right? And to think that we know it all means we'll never grow. We're stagnant already. We've
Yeah.
already cut ourselves right at the bottom, right? So
And it's so powerful when you can say, if you surround yourself only with people who agree with you all the time,
oh God.
then you'll never grow. So when you get around people who can challenge your beliefs and challenge your values, they may not change them, but it can strengthen them, right? When you have to defend the things that you think or defend the things that you believe, or like for you and I, we do a lot of coaching. When you get out and you actually teach to someone else and you have to help them work through their thinking and their thoughts, it helps you really hone and understand the things that you believe and hold dear. At least I found that that the more I teach and help people, and it means also that I have to be selective with the people that I allow to like be my clients.
Oh yes.
Yeah, because for the same reason, like, is it worth me giving my time to them, or are they gonna, and it's one of those things you have to get past that money part in your business, where it's not always about like, I just need to make the money. Sometimes it's like, is this person, being a client in my life, is it going to improve my business, improve my life, or is it going to make it worse?
Absolutely. And I made that accident, right? Not accident. I've learned from that mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I did just take up clients at first and realize this is not who I want to work with. I'm not into this. And making that transition, again, being able to really listen to yourself and know that things in your life are going to challenge you. If you're not being challenged, you're not doing something right? Ruffling feathers is an important thing, but also growing from the experience. And one of the things that I think is also important to recognize is that when you take another person's point of view and you put on your discerning hat and you decide, okay, is this worth value or is it not? Okay, now it is. Let's take a look at what they're saying. What are they actually meaning? And sometimes you can't get to the meaning without asking more questions. What you do is you develop a connection right there, right? That person all of a sudden realizes, oh, wait, you actually give a shit about what I'm saying? Like, you give somebody a sense of worth, right? And that is monumental. That can change the entire relationship. And all of a sudden that troll's like, hey, I'm your number one follower. Actually, you taught me, or vice versa. Troll, you taught me. And it can really change the dynamic of the relationship, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly like, you've mentioned a few times, the political atmosphere today is very caustic. And a lot of it is because like this stuff isn't happening. People aren't actually taking the time to value each other's opinions, and value, regardless of what we think, politically, business, spiritually, whatever. If I value you as a human being, let's actually talk through the things that, you believe and I believe. And so I love things like this, right? Where, the more we can get people on and talking and going through the things that they believe and what we hold dear, you realize that for the most part, my business partner says, him and I tend to be aggressively optimistic about people's intentions, right? And the reality is most people are good.
Absolutely.
And most people they want the best for themselves and the best for their families and the best for their communities. And, not everyone's like that, but most people are.
Most people are.
Most people are.
Those ones that, whether we stay on politics or anything else, even those that seemingly are coming across hateful, do you know that they're really just trying to protect something that they're scared of? They're just like you and me, right? They just, they haven't been able to communicate it or be heard or whatever that looks like. And, it would be pompous for anybody to think that they haven't been in the same shoes, right? So one of the things that makes us so uniquely amazing is that we're innovators, right? And we have this unique kind of body and the head and the whole 9 yards, but also we have this ability to really connect by communication. And that is the thing that's kind of a lost thing in today's society. And I'm just trying to bring some of that back. Let's get back.
Awesome. So that really helps, I think, drive into my next question, which is the common enemy, right? Every superhero has a common enemy. So the way I like to describe this for the show is, if you could go into your clients' lives right now and just remove something, remove a villain, and just take it out completely so they didn't have to deal with it ever again, what would that thing be? Like, if it was something specific, you could just go in and just eradicate immediately. As soon as they said, yes, Ravi, I'd like to hire you, and you could just go in and boom, take that common enemy out of their life, what would it be?
There's two things that are rolling around in my head that actually are, I think, very, very much the same. It would be status quo and the establishment, right? I'm not completely against the establishment, and the establishment can mean so much for so many people, but whether that's
those are like the common ways of thinking, and like the rules that they're living by that they may never have questioned, that kind of stuff.
So social constructs is what I get really specific on, is that kind of reality that we've just assumed, society's just assumed is okay. Like money, for example, right? This concept that money is happiness, or money gives us freedom, or money. No, we have it so backwards. And so being able to remove those two components gives the person a sense of freedom, and gives the person an opportunity to really look past kind of the things that have been set up as representational pieces of where you fit in, and allow them instead to look at themselves as, okay, I do have something to offer. Just because I didn't go to college doesn't mean I'm worthless. Just because I'm not earning six figures doesn't mean I'm not happy. These socially constructed realities that we've really become victim to, I really believe today. If we could remove those and start to listen deep within, what is it that makes you so uniquely special? That's when people, I gotta tell you, Rich, that's when people start to really gear up and start doing crazy things.
Yeah, so you're freeing them from the oppressive questions they've been, the oppressive rules they've put on themselves, whether they realize it or not, or society's put on them. And actually, I had a discussion in one of our other episodes that was like that, and he said, it would be better questions. I wish people could come in and just ask themselves better questions. And that's the same kind of thing. It's like, if I the six figures thing pops up, right? If I don't earn six figures, I'm not happy, right? And you're like, well, why? Like, what is it about six figures that you think is going to make you happy? And it's one of the things I realized a couple of years ago, actually, was that the thing that I wanted to do, and this is specific to me, but I wanted to travel full time with my wife and kids, and be able to go do and see things, and I wanted to have the location and time freedom. And I realized that my lifestyle, to do all the things that I want to do, it costs $5,000 a month. That works out to $60,000 a year. It's like, if I'm making $60,000 a year plus, it's far cry from six figures, but I've got all the things I want.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you said that, because my number is 85,000. 85,000 makes me a very happy individual. I'll tell you that. And I don't need to go. I'll go more, because if there's more available, then there's more resources I can give out. But getting real with the numbers you actually need versus that ad campaign you just saw that has a Ferrari in it. Ferraris don't make, they are fast, and that speed makes you happy. Maybe that having that kind of visual representation makes you happy, but that Ferrari doesn't make you happy.
Yeah. So what's interesting is you talk a little bit about how do you deal with contention, being content versus ambition. And I talk a lot about how do you have contentment in what you have and where you are, while still having a goal and a journey. Because then you realize that life is not about destinations. Life is about the journey to get from where you are to where you want to be. So if you learn to be content with where you are and learn to have ambition to where you want to be, then you start to enjoy the journey. It helps to know that six figures or college degrees, those are all destinations, and destinations are always fleeting. Right. Yeah. And the joy that you get from them is fleeting. Even if you are buying a Ferrari or buying a fancy car, you'll get the joy of I spent the money. You'll get that dopamine drop when you when you buy it, and then it goes away, and you have the car, and you're and it might have some value in your life, or it might not, but you realize that like you're still going to have that same discussion in your head about how am I going to be content with my life now, whether or not you have a Ferrari, right?
Now, right? What's
Yeah.
the next thing? And so instead of chasing the next thing, be open to the fact that this is a journey and there's always going to be a next thing. You want to develop those feelings now, right? That's the stability you want, so that when that Ferrari, if that Ferrari comes into your life and that's what you want, it is something that's cherished more than the possession, right? The value behind it, that significance. And then there's that
because it might represent other things in your life. It might represent a, you know, I've reached a certain point in my business, or I've reached a certain point in my life that I can you know, afford something like that. Or it might represent, like I had a client in the past who was a president of a company. He was president of a solar company, and he drove like an electric vehicle. And because, you know, solar company, electric vehicle, it seemed like it would go well, but he had to court investors on a regular basis. And he had a problem courting investors because of the car he drove, right? Because it didn't represent his station well. And so he went out and he bought a BMW 5 Series, which is not a super expensive car, but it was more in alignment with his station, and he had an easier time in his business actually courting investors. And some of that might have been perception, some of that might have been confidence, but like the you know, because it wasn't a money thing, right? He could have afforded the BMW before. It was just he thought it fit well. And so like things like expensive cars, things like that might actually serve business goals. Yeah, but you have to realize where they fit, because generally possessions aren't happiness.
No, and it's true. And it's funny that you bring up that one, because that's a perfect example of someone who was content with what they had. And then they were outside of that negative feeling or that negative association, right? Like that desperation, I need. Instead, they're content, and they realize, oh, again, that objectivity piece comes into play, right? This is not working for me. I'm going to be resourceful. What's actually going to work with me? He probably did his research, did what he needed to, got himself that 5 Series, and now it's working for him. It is all about being okay in the moment. When you are okay in the moment, then you can start to decipher what's going to bring you more.
Like what's working and what's working for your business. Anyways, that's really cool. So I think the next part of that, so if we can remove those from people, that's the common enemy. The other side of the common enemy is your driving force, right? So, you know, Spider-Man fights to save New York, Batman fights to save Gotham, you know, Google fights to index all of the world's information. What is it that you, Ravi, fight for? That if you could go out and, you know, your mission.
Yeah. So my mission is, surprise, surprise, one of it is truth, right? A big piece of it is truth, but a lot of it is freedom and connectivity. I think that we as a collective can do a way better job at representing what we are as a species, what we can do, and creating a space where everything, and I mean, Rich, every fucking thing, from a tree to a bird to a human to the waters, are all respected, and we all live in eco-harmony, right? So for me, that looks like working from the individual up and being able to help that individual become whole, because I think one of the problems we're seeing over and over is that there's a lack of wholeness, right? So that lack of wholeness becomes this kind of desperation or this negative angst, or, you know, fill in the blanks, right? Fill in the blank.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because you said two things that I think that are really important. You said we as a collective, and you said start as an individual. So and I want to unpack that a little bit, because there's a lot there. And so the first one is the collective idea, right? So what's interesting to me is that like groups of people don't exist, right? It's similar to what do you say, hot and cold, right? There is no such thing as cold. We just have, at a certain point, we determine that this level of heat is cold, right? Cold is a word that we ascribe to a certain level of heat. And with groups are words that we ascribe to certain sets of individuals. So groups don't, like, they're an ethereal thing. They don't really exist. Like all they're groups are individuals. Yeah, they're constructed of individuals.
That's right.
So the solution to having a better collective is to improve the individual.
Absolutely.
And that is so powerful. And I think it's there's a lot of things we could spend a whole episode talking just about the individual. But anyways, I think that's really cool that when it comes down to it, your mission is about improving the individual, because the more individuals that we improve, the better result we're going to have overall for our society and humanity and like our goals.
Oh, 100%. And for all you guys that are listening, I mean, just take a minute here and soak that in, right? What would it feel like if you were, what would it feel like if you felt whole? What would it feel like if you felt content? What would life look like for you? And what are the things you could actually do, right? Like those are some powerful things to think about. And when you start to think of it that way, then you realize that, yes, indeed, I do hold power. And so a lot of us on the regular playing field, right, on the lower end of the status quo, think that power is only for the elusive elites. But at the end of the day, no, it's just a personal thing.
Yeah, the power that comes from understanding yourself as an individual, right? That you have the power to make a change for someone else, right? It reminds me of that starfish story, right? There's 1,000 starfish up on the beach, and there's an old man going through and tossing each one into the ocean, and the kid comes up and goes, "Why are you doing that? Like, you're never going to be able to save all the starfish." And he picks up a starfish and says, "It matters to this one," and he tosses it back in the ocean. And he picks up another one, tosses it, and it matters to this one. Yeah. And my one of my mentors growing up always told me like my rule for life is to leave them better than you found them. Absolutely. So every time you interact with someone else, if your goal is to leave that person better than when you found them, maybe it's a smile, maybe it's a compliment, maybe it's coaching where you come and you actually help them make a new direction in their life, or you give them a good product or a good service that allows them to make a positive change in their life. You leave them better than you found them. That is really the value we have as entrepreneurs. The people who are listening to this show and doing that, is you have the power to make a positive impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can only do that when you yourself feel good. And I don't mean something that's just superficial, right? I mean, like, truly feel it in your heart, where you wake up and you feel good day in and day out. That's when you can give that smile out, right? That's when you can give those great innovations, create those, and then help, right? It's really such a simplistic idea, yet such a powerful one.
Absolutely. So last question, actually not last question, second last question, is your hero's tool belt, right? Maybe you're like Thor, you got that big magical hammer you swing around, or a bulletproof vest like your neighborhood police officer, or maybe it's just Evernote and you like how you can organize everything in Evernote, or build slides or something like that. What are the tools that you use, or your favorite tool or two that you use in your business that sort of helps you do what you do?
Yeah, so the first thing that without a doubt is Acuity, my Acuity scheduler, right? So my automated scheduler.
Yes.
Oh man, I remember when I first started, Rich, and I'm an automation queen, right? I'd be sending people emails back and forth. And at the time I didn't really know what existed, but Acuity is the number one tool that I will never, ever, ever drop. It is the thing that I'll make sure the credit card is always loaded for. You just keep charging that, baby.
It makes your life better.
It just makes my life, So, I mean, taking, for example, even last year, I had my sister's wedding, and I don't know if you know anything about Sikh weddings, but they're like a month long, and they're just grandiose. And so I was definitely out of commission in business for 2 weeks. There was no... my grandma, my aunts, you name it, they weren't going to just let me off the hook. And so knowing that there's only so much you can do when you're away from your computer and you can't respond to everybody, you still need those appointments to come flying in, right? Whatever that looks like. And so Acuity was the thing that saved my life. I was literally sitting at ceremonies and things would be coming into my email booked, right? So
nice.
Idea of having something automated to schedule out your life as much as you can. Right?
I tell all of my clients that if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist.
Oh God, it does not exist. And I can't remember. It does not exist.
I live and die by my calendar. And I had to earlier in my life, and I told you I have 4 kids. My first one, when he was about 6 months old, was right when the first iPhone came out. And I thought it would be an all right idea to let him play with my iPhone. And the first thing that he did was delete everything in my calendar. And I was like, oh God. So I had to, my kids are no longer allowed to touch my phone. Like
Good.
they
Good
can
man.
access other things, but so my youngest ones don't ever understand. They're like, how come I can't play with yours? I can play with mom's. I'm like, nope, you can't touch my phone because my calendar is my life, like my life. So yeah, I don't use Acuity. I use Schedule Once, but like I get it.
Yeah.
The calendar thing is basically like that's big. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like if you think through it, I've had a number of people on the show that have said something along the lines of calendars or deadlines, or like it's always something to do with time. Like how do you manage your time?
Yeah.
And Acuity and Schedule Once and other things allow you to automate some of that time stuff. So that's a very cool thing. If you don't yet have a time automation thing in your business,
Oh, tell them, Rich. Tell them.
pick it up. Pick up something like Acuity or Schedule Once. They'll change your life,
Yeah.
especially if you have to work with people.
Right. And be willing to invest in that, because
Mm-hmm.
your ROI on that is huge, right? You're not even going to really understand it till you start to see it in action. And that's when you realize that time, you get that time back. You send that link out, or you put that link on your website, and people start booking.
Oh yeah.
You're going to be
And
laughing.
the first time that you, like, if you've ever done this before, and I know like you and I both have done this, where you're like I got three people that you're getting on the phone, like, when are you available? When are you available? And you spend
Oh,
4 days going back and forth with emails, and, no, I can't meet on that day. No, I can't meet at this time. Like just blow your mind
oh,
off. And the first time you send out like a meeting schedule link, and everyone's just like, book, 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 ding. And you're like, oh,
you have that
oh.
moment. Literally, anybody who's ever experiences it actually has that moment where you're like, ah.
You're like, oh, there's fewer things that are better in that life. Most of them involve relationships with, people of the opposite gender.
Yeah.
So, not to be too colorful on the show, right? uh,
Are you tired of trying to write webinars that don't consistently convert? How would you like to have a webinar that effortlessly created sales in your online business? You can. Introducing the Webinar Alchemy Workshop. Webinar Alchemy Workshop is an online masterclass that will help you write incredibly persuasive webinars for your online courses quickly and easily. Using what you learn in this class, you can build a webinar that educates your entire audience while still creating sales. For a limited time, you can purchase this masterclass for only $7, and you'll get the exact framework I've personally used to help my clients sell more than $1 million worth of online coaching and training just over the last year. Simply text the word alchemy, ALCHEMY, to 444999, and I'll send you all the details.
The music is by Purple Planet Music. Visit www.purple-planet.com.
so that seems like a good time to go to the last question on the show, which is your own personal heroes, right? Frodo has Gandalf, Luke has Obi-Wan, Robert Kiyosaki has his rich dad. Who does Ravi have as heroes? Were they real-life mentors? Were they speakers or authors? Were they maybe just peers that were a few years ahead of you? And how important were they to what you've accomplished so far?
I do have a few. And so the first two would be my parents. Both of them are immigrants to Canada and started from the ground up. They're both entrepreneurs, right? And started in a tough setting. We were one of the few colored people in our community, right? In our little city. And my dad and mom were competing against top egg producers, right? Who happened to not be colored. So it was a tough time. And so being able to watch these guys really forge a path for us 4 kids. And
where's your heritage from, by the way?
So my parents are both from India, but
Okay,
I'm
India.
from Abbotsford, British Columbia. So just here again in British Columbia, but India is where they're both from. And they both immigrated over here to make a better life for themselves. And they took on risks. They took on challenges that that a lot of us are not, I would say, used to, right? Back in the day when the internet wasn't alive, there was a lot of that blood, sweat, and tears equity that you put in, right? And that was true. And so for seeing them do that was huge. And then them kind of instilling ethics, values, right? Treating people well, doing the best, and then being aware of the climate around us always, right? Being really aware of what's going on in the world. Where are you spiritually? What do you have to give back? That was the cornerstone. That was the foundation of who I became, right? Which I always laugh and say, you built this Lisa Simpson, right? Like, I don't know what to tell you, you built her. But from there, I would say that my current number one would be Gary Vaynerchuk, right? He is unapologetic and really doing something extreme. And this would be somebody who was an ordinary individual who built wealth and esteem over a significant period of time, just doing the right thing, right? Head down and work. And now he's taking his status quo, his wealth, and doing something even bigger with it. And that's social.
He's your inspiration for
Absolutely
where you want to go. That's awesome.
Yeah. So those would be the pinnacles of what I would base my foundation on. Of course, there was, a few people in between, like Mr. D, a principal in high school. I will always remember him, and Mr. Scott. These guys definitely built kind of a foundation around truth, right? And being able to speak and being able to lead, and giving me that ideology of leadership, and giving me a deep understanding of what that looked like. And it's different for all people, right? And so these are
absolutely.
Yeah.
And just as a thought too, you talked about your parents and the generation, they're the generation before us where, like, having women entrepreneurs 20, 30 years ago was not a big thing. And now here you are, because of what your parents have done and the stuff that you have, we have more ladies like you. I've got a whole bunch of people in my network who are really powerful entrepreneur women who are stepping up. And, I think it makes our business landscape a better place than it's ever been before. So I'm really excited for what our next 20 years are going to look like.
It is so cool. It is a very innovative time. We've got all the coolest technologies behind us. We have even more to offer as people, as individuals, and as a population. And so,
and
why not?
It's such a cool place. Like I told you I had my third daughter, right? I got 3 girls.
Right. And congratulations again.
Yeah, thank you. But the, such a cool time to raise young women, right? Because, 2016, love it or hate it, Hillary Clinton, broke that ceiling for, there was never even a question that she could have been president.
No.
Right? And my daughters have that as like a baseline that, women can be president of the United States. And I have a whole network of lady entrepreneurs that my daughters can look up to and say, I can do anything, right? Which is like, my mom and my grandmother didn't have those same role models to look up to. And now, you're going to be the type of role model that, like, I can point to for my daughters, and that's super cool.
It's so cool. Like,
anyways, to have heroes for young women.
It's cool.
So, so anyways, that's very cool.
Very empowering.
I think it's going to be cool for the next generation to have people like you for them to look up to, for their heroes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It means a lot, actually. It's very, I'm very grateful.
So we talked a little bit about this. Generally, I save this for last, but you actually talked about this earlier, is your guiding principles, like things that, the actions that you take on a daily basis. And I know you talked a little bit about your morning routine for things that contribute to your success. Is there anything other than your morning routine that's like a daily thing that you do, like, daily principles, actions that you always make sure that you take care of to make sure your business is going the way you want?
Yeah. So for me, you're probably you might not laugh. Let's not judge you before I say it. So I'll let you make the decision. But music is a big piece of that. And it seems so minuscule comparative to what we've discussed, but music is literally for the soul, right? And it gets those juices flowing. So I am constantly around music. That's a thing that's throughout my working sessions. Whether I'm creating, I have to have very specific music on, whether it's listening to something in YouTube that says epic and has, like, the soundtrack from 300 or something like that. Sure. It's going to get you
the blood flowing.
Yeah, exactly. So music is a big one, but also having balance. I think we as entrepreneurs forget that. So being able to take care of both ends, right? Knowing when to shut down, and having that ritual or that routine to shut down. I am somebody who will close the laptop at 5:30, right? 4:30, 5:30, somewhere in there. And I will start to cook dinner if it's not already in the slow cooker. because I enjoy cooking dinner, but I also want my husband and I to have a good meal, right?
Kids are really helpful for that, by the way. If you
Yeah,
ever get around having
maybe
kids,
I should.
because then they come and bother you all day long, especially if you work at home. They're like, "Hey, Daddy, you done yet? Can you come play?"
Right?
So,
And that it's so, you can totally speak to this, but it's so uplifting, right? Because we can get so mired into everything to do with business, and it'll take you down real quick if you get too lost in it. Creating those breaks. Now, it's very different than saying you got to keep the hustle alive. I agree, you got to keep the hustle alive, but you don't need to work yourself to the bone, giving yourself
yeah.
an
So
inspired break.
I always talk about. I think a lot of people talk about balance incorrectly. We think of balance like one of those legal things. I can't remember what those are called. The scales. Like we're trying to get it in, work and life in balance, and that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
Work-life balance is more like a rubber band, where you have certain periods where you're stretched, and then when you release, you have forward motion, right? And the rubber band goes back to being what do you call it? It's just in its regular state where you take the time to play, take the time to release, right? If you just constantly stretch the rubber band, it'll break.
And if you let go too late, it'll never go back to the same, right? You have that stretched. It's a great analogy. And honestly, I've never thought of it that way, but I'm about to utilize it day in and day out now. What a great analogy. Yeah. It's true, that visual representation of when you do stretch it, you can only stretch it for so long before it breaks or it doesn't go back to normal.
Or you stretch it out of its a normal thing. So like, when you talk about work-life balance, you have to, I like that analogy a lot, from just, sometimes you stretch, sometimes you release. And if you try to do, if you're never stretched, you're not going to move anywhere. And if you're always stretched, you're going to break something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, to kind of make sure that I get in the last point is reading, right? Making sure that I always, make sure that I always give myself more information, mastering my skill, mastering where I'm trying to go to, right? It's part of that balance. You can't know it all, and you can't not know it all, right? So you gotta be able to find that perfect balance and continue to feed your mind so that you're evolving, right? It's an evolution.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love reading, and it's like you have access to someone's whole life experiences that you can just pour them in your head. It's super cool. So the last thing I do on every show is I always like to finish them off with what I call the Heroes Challenge. And the Heroes Challenge is really simple. It's, do you have someone in your life or your network who is an entrepreneur that you think we should pull off their mask and hear their story? And is that an introduction you could make for us? And who would they be? Why do you think they should come on the show? And I'll probably end up cutting this portion of the show and sending to him as bait to get him on. So
yeah. You know what? Actually, it's a really interesting one, but I've just met a really cool entrepreneur. Her name is Ashley Cheeks, and I will make sure to make the introduction, but she has a really cool story, and she talks about the one thing we don't really hear about in entrepreneurship, and that is funding. And it is something that's been stuck in my head. So it's funny because I'm going to have her on my show too. Like, she needs to be out there speaking. She is doing some great things about having, again, people understand objectively what they need in the business and how to set themselves up to receive monetary funding from banks, right? People are so afraid.
How do you raise capital and stuff?
Yeah, that's how you do it. And, we walk in asking for what we might think is a right number that they may give us versus what we actually need. And quite quickly, that can shut a business down.
She probably even talks a little bit about, like, how do you know what that right number is? Like, how do you determine what you need?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm really excited to showcase her. And I think she's doing some cool things. And I truly don't think, we talk about funnels all the time, coaching, all these things. But the one thing that people forget is, you got to fund it. You got to fund the baby somehow. And so
and a lot of us entrepreneurs, we shoestring it.
God.
And shoestring, there's not a problem with shoestringing it, but eventually if you want to scale, you have to learn how to have capital reserves and how do you deploy them? How do you get them? And,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I would highly, highly challenge this hero to be on your show, because not only does she have a great business opportunity and idea, but she also has a really cool story that a lot of people can probably resonate with.
Awesome. That's super cool. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. So, Ravi, where can people find you if they want to, follow you online, maybe listen to your show, or maybe hit you up for coaching if they like sort of what you talked about today, and they see that as a benefit? Where should they look to find you?
Okay, so I am on almost all the social platforms. You can hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, right, at I am Ravi Tee, right? Or you can head over to my website where you'll find all the resources I have compiled, including links to my show. It's called LIT, so Lead, Inspire, Transform. So if you want to come and get lit with me, you want to check out the show.
I like that.
Right? You can just pop over to ravitoor.co, so RAVITOOR.co, and check me out. And, you should be
for your coaching, just so people know, who is the perfect person to get on coaching with you?
The perfect person to get on coaching with me. Well, that would be, I would say you, but what I mean more specifically is if you're someone who believes you have a purpose, there's something deep, 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 deep within you that is calling to you. You don't know exactly what it is, but you know you're meant for something more, and something around your life is showing up as kind of a negative sign or a red flag, like you really need to fix it, then you need to come and talk to me, because I can guarantee you probably have a solution, and I can help dig that one out.
Find it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, thank you very much, Ravi, for hopping on the show. And for all of you guys who are listening, if you want to find Ravi, it's Ravi Toor, RAVITOOR.co. And on social media, it's I am Ravi T, IAMRAVITEE.
Thank you so much, Rach, for having me on today. And thank you guys for listening. What a pleasure.
Awesome. Good to have you.
Good to have you too. Thank you.